The laughter cut through the elegant restaurant like a knife through silk. Loud, arrogant, meant to humiliate. The man in the charcoal suit waved crisp $100 bills in his hand, his voice dripping with mockery as he looked at the young waitress standing before him. "You work here and you can't even speak proper English?" He smirked at his table companions, then turned back to her with a cruel challenge that made every head in the restaurant turn. "Tell you what, sweetheart, serve me in English properly, and I'll give you $2,000 cash. Right here, right now." The restaurant went silent. 23-year-old Ariana Velasquez stood frozen, her cheeks burning with shame, her accent suddenly feeling like a brand across her forehead. She wanted to run, wanted to disappear, but her mother's tired face flashed in her mind. The woman who stayed up late sewing, who always said, "Don't let pride make you small, Mija. Let strength make you tall." So Ariana did something that would go viral within 48 hours, something that would humble a millionaire, inspire millions, and prove that true power doesn't shout. It speaks quietly in 7 languages. If you believe that dignity is worth more than money, that kindness beats cruelty every time, and that the quietest voices sometimes teach the loudest lessons, stay with the story. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because what happens in the next 8 minutes will restore your faith that grace and intelligence can defeat arrogance without ever raising a voice. The girl who worked 2 shifts to build a dream. Ariana Velasquez had arrived in the United States 18 months ago with a backpack, $200, and a dream that kept her awake at night. She wanted to become a language teacher, to open a small school in her hometown of Quetzaltenango, Guatemala, where children like her younger brother could learn not just Spanish, but English, French, maybe even Mandarin, where education wouldn't be a luxury, but a birthright. But dreams, she learned quickly, don't pay for themselves. Her mother, Rosa, was 52 years old and worked as a seamstress in a factory that paid barely enough to cover rent. Her brother, Mateo, was 14 and brilliant, straight A's in every subject, but the local secondary school charged fees Rosa couldn't afford. Every month, Ariana sent home $800. Every month. It was barely enough, so she worked, double shifts, sometimes triple. She worked at Maison de Lumiere during the day, an upscale French restaurant where entrees cost what she made in a week, and cleaned offices at night. She slept 5 hours, if she was lucky, ate 1 meal a day to save money, studied English pronunciation on her phone during bus rides, repeating words over and over, trying to soften the accent that seemed to follow her like a shadow. Reservation. Reservation. She practiced constantly. But Guatemala was in her voice the way some people carry their hometown in their walk. It was part of her, and most days she was proud of it, until days like today, when men like Richard Collins made her feel like her heritage was something to be ashamed of. The restaurant where money talks loudest. Maison de Lumiere sat on the corner of 5th and Madison, a place where crystal chandeliers caught afternoon sunlight and made it dance across white tablecloths, where the wine list was 20 pages long and the waitstaff moved like ballet dancers, silent and precise, where customers tipped in hundreds, not because the service was exceptional, but because they could. Ariana had been working there for 7 months. The manager, Philippe, had hired her despite her limited English because she was reliable, polite, and worked harder than anyone else on staff. "You have good spirit," he'd told her in French, which he spoke fluently, though he didn't know that yet. That matters more than perfect words. Most customers were kind. Some were indifferent, but there were always a few, the ones who looked at her name tag, heard her accent, and decided she was less than human, the ones who snapped their fingers instead of making eye contact, who called her sweetheart in that condescending tone that made her want to pour wine in their lap. Richard Collins was one of those. He was 58 years old, self-made millionaire, real estate magnate who owned half the commercial buildings downtown. He wore success like armor, tailored suits, Italian leather shoes, a Rolex that caught the light every time he gestured. He'd built an empire from nothing, and he wanted everyone to know it. Seated at his usual corner table were 2 women, his girlfriend, Veronica, 29 years old, dressed in an emerald silk dress that probably cost more than Ariana's rent, beautiful in that polished, expensive way that came from personal trainers and dermatologists and spa appointments every Thursday. Next to her sat Elaine, Collins' executive assistant, 43, in a conservative beige blouse and pearl earrings. She'd been working for him for 12 years, long enough to know his moods, his cruelties, his rare moments of generosity. Both women looked uncomfortable as Collins raised his voice, but neither said anything. That's how it always worked in his orbit. You either laughed along or stayed silent. Speaking up meant losing your place at the table. If you've ever worked in service, ever been judged for your accent, your background, or where you came from, drop a comment saying, "I see you, Ariana." Let's show the algorithm that these stories matter. That dignity matters. Keep watching. What happens next will give you chills. The moment everything changed. Ariana approached the table carrying 3 leather-bound menus, her posture straight, despite the exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. She'd already worked an 8-hour shift. This was hour 9. Her feet ached in the black flats she'd resoled twice because new shoes cost money she didn't have. "Good afternoon," she said carefully, placing the menus down with practiced precision. "Welcome to Maison de Lumiere. May I start you with something to drink, or would you prefer to hear today's specials?" Her English was clear but slow, each word carefully pronounced, her accent thick but understandable. She'd practiced this greeting 1,000 times. Collins barely looked up from his phone. "Water, sparkling, and bring us a bottle of the Chateau Margaux. The '09. "Of course, sir." Ariana wrote it down, her handwriting neat despite her trembling hand. "And menus," he added, finally glancing at her. "Unless you're just going to stand there." "I've already brought the menu, sir." She gestured to the leather folders on the table. He looked down, seeing it for the first time, and something flickered across his face. Annoyance at being corrected, even politely. "Right. Well, give us a few minutes." Ariana nodded and turned to leave, but as she did, she heard him mutter to Veronica, "These people come here and can't even speak the language properly." She froze mid-step. Her heart hammered, so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. Veronica laughed uncomfortably. Elaine studied her water glass. Ariana forced herself to keep walking. To the bar, to the kitchen, to anywhere she could breathe without feeling like her chest was caving in. But 15 minutes later, she had to return, to take their order, to do her job. This time, Collins was ready. The challenge that would go viral. "So," Collins said as she approached, his tone casual but his eyes sharp, "what's the special today? And try to pronounce it correctly this time." Ariana's throat tightened. She'd read the special sheet a dozen times, had practiced of French names with Philippe, but standing here, under this man's mocking gaze, the words felt slippery. "Today we have the cocoa vin, the bouillabaisse, and the—" She stumbled slightly on the next word, her accent making the French sound different than she intended. Collins burst out laughing. Not a polite chuckle. A loud, theatrical laugh designed to draw attention. "Did you hear that?" He looked at Veronica, then Elaine, then the nearby tables. She's working in a French restaurant and can't even pronounce French food. Ariana's face burned. She could feel eyes on her from every direction. The bartender, the other servers, the customers pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quietly. "English is my second language. I'm still learning." "Second language?" Collins interrupted, pulling out his wallet. He counted out 10 crisp $100 bills and fanned them on the table like playing cards. "I'll tell you what, sweetheart. If you can serve me properly in English, no accent, no mistakes, I'll give you all of this. $1,000. Cash." The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Even the kitchen noise seemed to have stopped. Ariana looked at the money. $1,000. That was rent. That was what she sent home to her mother for 3 months. That was textbooks for Mateo and medicine for her grandmother's diabetes. But the way he was looking at her, like she was performing circus animal, like her dignity was for sale, made something inside her shift. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "You are not small, Mija. You are the daughter of teachers and farmers and women who survive wars. You carry their strength." Ariana took a slow breath, set down her notepad, and when she looked up, her eyes were clear. This is the moment that changes everything. If you believe that intelligence and grace can defeat arrogance, keep watching and hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see how this ends. 7 languages, 1 devastating response. You want me to serve you properly? Ariana asked, her voice steady now. Not loud, not angry, just calm. Collins leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirking. That's what I said. In English? Isn't that what we're speaking? Ariana nodded slowly. Then she began to speak. But not in English. Si vous préférez, je peux continuer en français. Her French was flawless. Native level. The kind of accent that comes from years of study and natural aptitude. Collins's smirk faltered. Before he could respond, she switched to Italian. O posso parlare in italiano, se preferisce. Smooth, melodic, perfect pronunciation. Veronica's hand froze halfway to her wine glass. Oder vielleicht möchten Sie Deutsch? Ariana continued, her German crisp and clear. Elaine's mouth fell open slightly. 我也可以说中文. Mandarin, tonal, precise. The nearby tables had turned completely now. Everyone watching this young waitress, who moments ago had been mocked for stumbling over English words. الربما تفضل العربية. Arabic flowed from her lips like water. Collins had gone pale. The bills on the table suddenly looked obscene. Finally, Ariana switched back to English. Her accent was still there. She hadn't tried to hide it, but her words were measured, dignified, powerful. I speak 7 languages, Mr. Collins. English is my 4th. I came to this country 18 months ago with nothing but a dream to become a teacher. I work 16-hour days to send money to my mother and younger brother in Guatemala. My accent exists because I am fluent in 6 other languages that you will never speak. My accent is not ignorance. It is evidence of my intelligence, my education, and my courage to leave everything I knew to build a better life. She paused, looking directly into his eyes. Would you prefer I continue in English, sir? Or shall I switch to one of the 6 languages you don't understand? The silence was absolute. Collins opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. His face had gone from pale to red, but not with anger, with shame, deep, profound shame. The other diners began to applaud, slowly at first, then louder. Within seconds, the entire restaurant was clapping, some people standing, others calling out bravo. The apology that changed everything. Collins sat frozen as the applause echoed around him. Veronica had tears in her eyes. Whether from embarrassment or emotion, it wasn't clear. Elaine was openly crying, her hand covering her mouth. Ariana simply nodded politely, picked up her notepad, and said quietly, I'll give you a few more minutes to decide on your order. She walked back to the kitchen, her legs shaking so badly she had to grip the door frame to steady herself. The moment she was out of sight, she leaned against the wall and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Philippe, the manager, appeared beside her. He struggled for words. That was magnificent. I think I'm fired, Ariana whispered. You're not fired. You're getting a raise. What Ariana didn't know was that everything had been recorded. A customer at the next table had started filming the moment Collins raised his voice. The video, all 3 minutes and 47 seconds, was uploaded to social media before Collins even paid his bill. Within 6 hours, it had 2 million views. Within 24 hours, 10 million. News outlets picked it up. Morning shows called it the most dignified response to bullying ever caught on camera. Think pieces were written about accent discrimination, immigrant experiences, and the arrogance of wealth. But back at the restaurant, none of that had happened yet. Collins sat at his table for another 20 minutes without ordering. Finally, he stood up, walked to the bar where Philippe was standing, and said quietly, I need to speak to that waitress. If you're still watching, comment Dignity Wins right now. Share this with someone who needs to remember that grace is more powerful than money. Subscribe because stories like this need to reach everyone. We're almost at the ending that will leave you in tears. The check that proved people can change. Ariana returned to work the next day, expecting nothing. Maybe a complaint. Maybe a termination. She'd gone home the night before, called her mother, and cried for an hour. Not from sadness. From exhaustion. From years of holding everything together finally cracking open for just one moment. Rosa had listened quietly, then said, "Mija, you showed them who you are. That's all we can ever do." When Ariana arrived at Maison de Lumiere for her afternoon shift, Philippe met her at the door. His expression was unreadable. "Someone left this for you." He handed her an envelope. Thick, expensive paper. Inside was a check, not for $1,000, for $10,000. Attached to it, a handwritten note on personal letterhead. "Dear Ms. Velasquez, there are no words adequate to apologize for my behavior yesterday. I have spent my life building wealth while forgetting to build character. You reminded me, with grace I did not deserve, that true worth cannot be measured in dollars. This check is not payment for your dignity that can never be bought or sold. It is an investment in your dream. I understand you wish to become a teacher. Please accept this contribution toward that goal. I am also establishing a scholarship fund in your name at the community college downtown. It will support students learning English as a second language, so they never have to endure what I put you through. You taught me more in 3 minutes than I have learned in 58 years. With deep respect and profound apology, Richard Collins." Ariana's hands trembled as she read it. "Then read it again." The check was real. The words were real. She sat down at the nearest table and wept. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that dignity is priceless and grace defeats arrogance every single time, do 3 things right now. First, hit that subscribe button. We share stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about kindness winning, about underdogs proving that character matters more than cash. Join 800,000 people who believe the world needs these reminders. Second, share this video. Tag someone who's ever been judged for their accent. Someone working 3 jobs to build a dream. Someone who needs to remember that their background is not a burden. It's a badge of honor. Let this story reach every corner of the internet. Third, comment below, what would you have said? Tell us how you'd respond if someone mocked your accent, your heritage, or your struggle. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And if you're watching this as someone who's ever judged someone for their accent, let this be your moment. Comment, "I'll do better," and mean it, because we all have the capacity to be either Richard Collins at the beginning of this story or Richard Collins at the end. The choice is ours. Ariana's story proves that the quietest voices teach the loudest lessons, that true strength doesn't need to shout, that speaking 7 languages means you worked 7 times harder than people who mock your English. Be kind. Be humble. Be like Ariana. Because in the end, dignity isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose. Every single day. In every interaction. With every word. Choose wisely.